Hey everybody, Adhpa here. Thought this week I'd do a little something about ghosts. David Little Elk dropped a recent video and I love his stuff. If you haven't checked him out, please do. He tells the truth about Lakota star knowledge, and it is exactly the same understanding I've come to through this energy journey and exploration that I've been on. In other words, I believe that that knowledge that those people carry is a good, reasonable, workable explanation of energies and how they function with the human and with the human faculties, energy faculties. So he did one about ghosts. And he was really talking about how a lot of what people think are ghosts are energy signatures, energy residues, if you will, pools of energy left behind because of the impact, perhaps, of the crossing of the souls. And he disputes certain other ideas about ghosts that people have. However, I have an experience with ghosts, real ghosts, actual energy entities that have, it's as if these beings haven't made the journey. I have direct experience with that, in that I had one who I knew to be around, who I knew the exact circumstances of because they all happened in my neighborhood, and I was close to the man who passed wife, and my son was close to theirs, and I had an experience with him where he literally jumped into my body while I was napping. He sort of tricked me in a dream state, and it was an extremely painful experience. And there were repercussions of that, and of such of a nature. This was not a physical ailment. This was clearly, an attempt at an internal possession of my physical being by another soul. And in the end, it was only resolved, and he was only forced to leave through some ceremony work that I did through an Adhpa. That happened to me. That was real. I hesitate to discuss what the experience was like, but it truly did feel like I was being pulled. I could feel this thing trying to pull my inner control away from me, this man. As I said, because I knew a lot about him and his character as a result of discussions with his wife, I was able to understand what was going on and resist it. But it was a very odd thing. And the oddest part of it was that when I would look in the mirror, I would feel like my eyes being trying to be pulled apart almost. And I could see like one half of my face was very masculine. It was, now I know that that's an interpretation I was getting, but it was as a result of something that actually physically occurred to me and had to be resolved with a physical, as it were, intervention. And it was. The other one that I have an experience of is my child's, who was born in one of the oldest homes in the state of Maryland, the oldest Catholic home for sure in the state of Maryland. It was a grand stone structure, very Georgian structure. And the family that had lived there and had built the structure was a very prominent family in their generations, and probably still are in the state of Maryland. And there something happened. Now, I wasn't aware at the time. It only became evident to me years later. My child was born in that house, and we moved within months. And there was an item I had taken with me because it was so beautiful. It's basically a riding crop that had some information carved into the handle. It was very crude. It was obviously handmade. It had a name and a date of 1787. Uh, anyway, it was an early date. It was either the last 2 decades of the 18th century or the very, very early 19th century. I want to say it was 1787 though. And a name that was the name of that family. So it had obviously belonged to someone in that family, and it had a beautiful, beautiful patina. You can imagine this was a very old pony cart crop. So it was a wooden stick about this long, and then at the end it would have had a leather piece. That leather piece, there was some remnants of it, but it was basically gone, and it had eventually been tied on with wire. It had been repaired many times. There was a repair on the stem with wire as well. So anyway, it was just an extremely interesting artifact, and I was allowed to take it, and I've kept it all these years with my sort of special objects of over the lifetime. Anyway, didn't seem to be much, but when my child reached speaking age, he suddenly started to talk about his invisible friend a lot. And he had a name, and that was Jack. We didn't think too much of it. And then, but it went on for years where there was this relationship that he had with this invisible friend. And eventually I was working with a Saponi gentleman in North Carolina, Saponi Cherokee, and he told me quite out of the blue that there was something attached to my child, and that I of course said, oh yeah, we think that's Jack. You know, by that time I had sort of put it together because the name carved into the riding crop was basically John Durr, J something Durr, John Durr, as I looked it up and followed up on it. And of course, children named John were often called Jack in that century. And so Jack Durr was a person that I was able to find and verify who had actually died as a child in a cholera epidemic, or dysentery. I think it was cholera though. So over the years, as my child went to school, this continued to go on, and he would say things like, if he wasn't paying attention in school, and the teacher would call me in and say, you know, your child doesn't pay attention, but somehow always is able to answer the questions on the test, and I don't know what's going on. I can't catch him cheating. I don't understand what's going on. And so I asked my child, and his response was, oh, Jack tells me the answers. So there was clearly something actually going on there, and it was documented. Well, the long and short of it is, after meeting with the Saponi gentleman, and this was before I had my own experience, all of this, I started to really try to touch base with whoever Jack was, and eventually I was able to. It was a very scared child, a child who thought they had done something wrong, and so was afraid to go to light. They were afraid. They thought they were going to be punished by their parents. That's a long story, but nonetheless, this little soul of this little child refused to go into the light because of that, and had been hanging around with my child, you know. At any rate, we did eventually convince Jack to go. And when that happened, which did not happen in the presence of my child, nonetheless, some distance away at the moment that it occurred, my child had a visceral reaction, a really almost a catatonic state of just, there was something just completely frozen, and we were able to get all through that. And eventually, years later, my child had told me as a teenager that, whatever was going on was really bad. Jack was starting to take control. And, of course, by then I had had my experience, so I understood what that meant. At any rate, and it all resolved. So that was a real experience of something that I can only share as an experience. I cannot explain. I mean, I think I can explain it, but I have no way to verify that. So whatever I explain it as is just a story. But I'd like to throw cards on it and see what the cards have to say about beings, humans on death, who either, in the case of the child, are afraid to cross until someone can help them not be afraid of it in some way. Or in the case of the man with me, had a very specific plan he wanted to carry out after his drug-induced death. There was malintention in that being, in that spirit, very clearly. But also who refused to cross because he intended in any way, shape he could to take over a body to get to someone, specifically his wife. Interestingly enough, after I did the Adhpa and everything and it was gone from me and I was okay, his wife did die in the same circumstances, just around the corner from the house in which he had also died in those circumstances. It was a horrible, horrible tragedy. But he had made it clear to me he intended to get her, and it clearly seemed to me that in some way finally he did. And maybe at that point they both crossed. I can't say to that. But let me bring you down to the table and I'll throw the cards on it and we'll see what the cards can tell us about human souls that refuse to cross when they pass. All right, hold tight and I'll bring you down. Okay, we're going to use the Rider-Waite today, and then we're going to clarify with the Moon Witch cards. This is by, I don't know if it says on this Oracle deck who it's from. Exploration of the Divine Feminine and the source of their powers, the inner moon. All right, please remember to like and subscribe. It's free. It helps me out, helps get the word out there. I'm not doing this for money or anything, not making anything on it, but I would like to get it shared out and get some feedback. So also leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Okay, so I'm going to pull on the topic of ghosts. We're going to ask the tarot cards to tell us about human ghosts, human souls that don't cross over. What can you tell us about the human soul at death? Can it refuse to cross over? Tell us about the ghosts. This I have shuffled numerous times before I brought the camera down. So we'll see if anything jumps out of the deck. Oh, the Page of Cups jumps out. Oh, that's a very interesting card. Because, of course, the Page of Cups is that, it sort of represents the human soul in a sense. I don't know why I'm not getting a getting that thing to come in. Oops. Maybe it needs my hand behind it or something to focus on. Any rate, Page of Cups. So that represents, the person holding the spirit. You can think of it as the soul in the cup and the physical being holding it, if you want. So it's the opening the door to spirit. This is a spirit suit in the way that I read. So a very appropriate card for this read. And let's have the clarifiers that we're going to have here. Again, I have shuffled them numerous times, so I'll do one more shuffle and then I'll see if anything jumps out. Clarifying about human ghosts. Ghost suits. Sorry about that, folks. My camera is set up a little different today. Okay. I hope you guys are all doing your gardens, enjoying your time out in nature. Now's the time for weeding on the moon. In fact, today is the day for weeding. It's a good day to get out there, weed out your garden, or weed the mental thoughts out. The bad habits, anything you don't want to come back. Take your medicine to get rid of your illness. It's all a good day for that. All right. Here we go. Let's see. Nothing's popping, so we're going to take it after this spin. Whatever's on the top. Oh, it likes that. Okay. Let's see what we get. All right, clarified by Moonflower, bloom even if no one is watching. Well, that's interesting again because, we want to talk about this thing that happens when, no one can see it, and this is indicating that, we want to talk about something that occurs, whether we see it or not, whether we know it or not, that has to do with the human soul and spirit. So I'd say those are good clarifiers. What is the challenge to a human when they leave their being? And we have the Seven of Pentacles. And that is, people are waiting on something. They have expectations. When you plant and you're watching the harvest, you have expectations. But sometimes in that you miss something. See how he's dropped first fruit there and it's on the ground? He's not picking it up. Is he honoring it as first fruit? I don't know. He's contemplating. He's thinking about these things. He's thinking about these things that he has left undone or that never came to fruition. And I think that is a challenge when we cross. So what are we holding in our minds that seems undone? And possibly that can keep us from crossing. That's what this seems to say to me. And that's clarified by no, sleep on it. Yeah, I think that's what's about. People get complacent or they're afraid to go, or they wanted something else to happen, so they refuse. It's just a refusal. They're challenged by their attachments to the world, and that was my experience with both of those, I have to say. What they have control of, Judgment card. So you could say what they have control over is that going to the light. They have that control. Balsamic moon, things come and go. Surrender to the universe. That's what they have control over. That is when you cross, you can control whether or not you go. That's up to your soul. Past Page of Swords. So from, this thinking, creative thinking was in the past. all of the things that you thought were right, worth fighting for, worth declaring, ideas, standing on, he's on a little bit of a hilltop, standing on the higher ground to declare. All of those things are in the past. Clarified by witchy medicine, connect to earth. You know, all of the abilities that tilting at windmills, taking the actions, legal actions, thought actions, all of that is in the past. In the past, also the connection to the earth. That's all part of earth living. And you see she's going sort of through this portal. So their connection to the earth is over, and to thinking, and to ideas, and to the action of ideas. What they can't control, Three of Swords. They can't control that ending. They can't have no control over it when it comes. And that is clarified by stay true to yourself, true north. Interesting, true north in the same position, in the true north position in the reading over the, this is that path among the stars as well. You can think of it as that path we take, the journey through the rainbow bridge. People call it lots of different things, but you have no control over that. You have no control over the ending and the path you have to take as a soul that's laid out to stay true to your soul journey. Intentions, important aspect, Ace of Wands. I think these beings, what it's saying, they intend to get a new passion. They want to keep living. They want to sprout again. They want to keep this connection to earth. That's what they're intending to do if they don't leave. They're attached. They're holding to it. Waning gibbous, count your blessings. They now understand at some level something about the value of this earth life, and so they cling to it. How they see themselves, Nine of Cups, Nine of Spirits. So they think they, finally they have it all. Finally they understand. Finally they could make it work. Finally they have all the cups lined up. Vision, get clear on what you want. Yeah. See, at that point, they finally get what they couldn't see in life. And they're standing in that. And that holds them very closely to the earth. They don't want to lose it. But they're an environment of the Two of Pentacles. The balance between earth and moving on. They're caught in that. They can't let go of that earth. They keep getting tied back down to it. Cast a circle. Healthy boundaries are crucial for growth. Cast a circle. So we got the infinity here, and then we've got the circles. This is the environment in which they sit. Maybe they're stuck in a circular pattern. They're stuck in a circle or stuck in a cycle, an endless, eternal cycle. Hopes and fears, the Fool. And that makes perfect sense. They want to get out there. They want to keep living. They're not ready to walk away. They're afraid to make the journey. They think it'll be the end of living, and so they're trying to cling to what they think is the value of their being. Movement, inspirations. Inspiration is drawn to motion. So they know, their hope and their fear is both in that they know they can't stay here. They know they have to move on. They're afraid to move on. And final outcome, Queen of Wands. Queen of Wands is that director of internal passion. They have to make the choice. In the end, for all of them, They have to make the choice. But it also indicates that somebody could come along and direct them and help them to see. So, it is both that they must do an inner direction and desire and want to go, but also there can be help from outside to get them to that process. And that is clarified by familiar. Yep, listen and learn. So if you are connected and like as a familiar, and you notice she has her familiar here too. So there is this aspect with the outcome of these souls that don't leave, that they can become attached to people like a familiar. And that's, I think, what happened with my child and what that guy tried to do with me. They can control your inner emotions and passions, and that's clearly what they tried to do with us. So there is definitely that possibility if they don't go. You also can read it that in the final outcome, if someone can come in and assist them, then they can go. And let's just see the bottom of the deck and see what it has to tell us for this. Knight of Pentacles. Those are those long, steady actions of well-being, as clarified by Sekhmet, courage, truth, and shadow work. So I think what this is saying is that, these are like beings of the earth with good intentions. It can take a long time. Maybe it's up to people on the earth who are of good hearts and good natures to work with them, to help them to cross. And by doing this shadow work themselves and being courageous. So when you run across these energies, of a ghost, don't immediately jump to fear, but try to understand what might be going on with one of these beings. It's possible that you can assist them, as we were able to with that child. Certainly you can keep them from having control over you in some aspect that you're not comfortable with, if you're aware of it. So I think, again, we got a really good read from the cards on this question and this topic. Please leave me a comment, let me know what you think, subscribe, hold on, and I'll bring you up, and we'll close this out. All right, so once again, it seems the cards are listening to that question. I think we have numerous things going on with entities, ghosts, people that choose not to cross for whatever reason, or maybe are afraid to cross. So there are definitely energy signatures or energy residues that are left. You can think of it as like maybe a stain on the energy field from an event. So David Little Elk in his video talked about a particular family tragedy where the whole family was lost in a very quick and tragic means and method, and it left signatures of some sort there, and the Lakota people understood how to handle it. And possibly that is what it was. Possibly also it was, souls that were afraid to make that journey for some reason, but then were assisted with the help of the Lakota people that knew what to do and how to do it. I will say that with the experience I had with the child Jack, it took me a long time. I had to build rapport with that being so that he would make his presence known to me. And then there was a moment where I was doing some what I considered sacred work on a mound site, working on preserving and saving that site from being constructed on. And one of my trips on that site, there was a moment that occurred, and I did not make that moment occur, but I did know what to do when it occurred. And I think that ties into what David Little Elk was saying about how medicine people or spiritual interpreters, if you want to call them that, how we actually work, which is not with the whole frou-frou, my guides tell me this, and I got a guide named that, and da, 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 da. And you might have entities you work with, you know their names for some people. That, I mean, that's not unheard of. But what's more likely to happen is what happened, for instance, in the case of Jack, where I worked with that little being directly, human to human, and the entities that care on a bigger level allowed a certain thing to occur or brought about a certain thing which I perceived, so somehow connected with my perception, and then I was able to use that to help Jack. So what actually happened, in fact, is I was on a path, a light appeared in the sky over me. It was not the sun. It was its own light, a very distinct, bright light, which I understood to be an energy portal, not a physical thing, and I realized was the light. And then I sensed this child standing behind me, and I had a conversation with him. And in that conversation with him, because of something I perceived in the light, I experienced him accepting it and literally going happily, joyfully on into the light. And at that moment, my child had this reaction as that entity left, of being something pulled out at a very deep level. So, yeah, neither of us were harmed, I will say this. But I will also say, if you think you have an experience going on with what you believe to be a ghost, please contact someone who understands these things and try to get yourself some clarity on what's going on. Email me, leave me a comment. I'm happy to talk to you about it and do what I can to assist you. Or, find an elder or someone, hey, maybe email David Little Elk. Maybe he understands these things as well. Anyway, so that's what I got. Like, subscribe. Please come back next week. I'll have a new video up, and enjoy your spring, everybody. Love you guys. All right. Take care.